Transform your home during Blinds.com's Black Friday Super Sale. Get up to 50% off site-wide, plus huge doorbuster deals on popular styles. Go DIY and do it all 100% online, or choose white glove service with expert design help and professional installation. Both backed by Blinds.com's 100% satisfaction guarantee. Blinds.com's Black Friday Super Sale is here. Save up to 50% site-wide and get a free professional measure. Limited time offer, rules and restrictions apply. See Blinds.com for details.
Welcome to The Paper Fold. I am your host, Sarah, the Paper Nerd, and I'm so glad to be back nerding out with you on my favorite topic, stationery. Today, it's my honor to welcome Rachel Kroh of Heartell Press. While this range is now 11 years old, it distinguished itself from day one by not looking or feeling like anyone else. Heartell stands apart thanks to its dynamic color, its heartfelt handwritten messaging, and that every last design comes to life slowly via a carefully carved woodblock. However, whether a given design tackles life's highs or lows, there is a radical sincerity in each utterly begging to be shared. Receiving one of these during a wonderful or difficult moment from a loved one is the next best thing to them being there with you. In this, the first of 2 episodes, Rachel and I cover how she created a business model around her lifestyle instead of tailoring her life to the needs of her business. Meanwhile, most collaborations tend to be amongst makers, but Rachel chose to collaborate with a prominent author and grief educator, or perhaps the collaboration found her. These 15 cards, as well as every Heartell offering really, don't just help others navigate grief. They redefine both loss and growth. It's heady, it's inspiring, and I'll have Rachel on right after this. Hey nerds, just stepping in with a Girl with Knife update. This fantastic and fantastical LA-based brand hails from the imagination of the incredible creative powerhouse Alicia Castaldi. I've had the honor of watching the dramatic rise of this cutting-edge California house of design since it was founded in 2018. Now, as 2026 dawns, it has officially reached a destination that is not only the pinnacle of fierce, but only for the fierce. So, if you believe that life is best lived glamorously with reckless abandon in 6-inch stilettos, Girl with Knife is your new BFF in paper goods, home decor, and luxury gifts. With so much on her design plate, it's always a thrill to see new card designs from Alicia, who received the 2022 Louis Award for Artist of the Year. I actually tend to hoard her cards because there is so much more going on than you see on their surface. Yes, there is an innate glamour, but beneath that, there's also an honesty and simplicity comprising its true design strength. Every card is carefully brought to life, slice by slice, with Alicia's trusty X-Acto blade. And while greeting cards themselves are a deceptively simple product category, they are both the heart and the core of this brand. After all, a card can heal long-standing rifts, it can articulate difficult or complicated emotions, and the words written upon them endure forever. Alicia understands this distinctive magic, and it's evident in spades in her 2 new love cards created to celebrate her 20-year wedding anniversary with her cherished stock boy. While the verbiage is marvelous as always, my favorite reads, "You're mine forever," because let's face it, you can't afford another divorce. The presentation is equally sleek, smart, and completely gorgeous, just as you want to forever exist in the eyes of your partner. As I mentioned, design elements tend to find their way from greeting cards onto other Girl with Knife creations. Maybe a familiar image will grace an oh-so-luxe pillow, ultra-thick gift wrap, or perhaps an exotically scented candle, larger-than-life art print, or posh journal. Explore it all, including 200 sensational cards, at your leisure on Girl with Knife's recently refreshed website. This dashing domain is ready for its 2026 close-up, styled with Engelbert Humperdinck records in homage to the famed former owner of Alicia's Knife House Bel Air. So head on over to girlwithknife, all spelled out.com, and immerse yourself in this most swoon-worthy spot. I just know your spirit will be fiercely elevated. Meanwhile, if you are in the trade, shop this top shop brand sensation exclusively on Fair 24/7. I guarantee your stationery, as well as your head, living, and workspace, will slay. Rachel, welcome to the Paper Folds.
Thank you, Sarah. It's such an honor to be here.
Thank you so much. So of all the configurations that I have seen of stationery companies over the years, I think that of Heartell is the most distinctive. So I think first and foremost, can you take us through where you and your staff are physically and how together you logistically bring Heartell to life?
Yes, of course. So when I started, I was living in New York. That's when I first met you, was when I did my first NSS way back in 2016 is when I first started doing wholesale. And at that time, it was just me and I was living in New York and I had a tiny little studio in Brooklyn. And then my husband and I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana in 2016 to be near his family. My father-in-law was sick and we wanted to live somewhere more affordable and, try to have children and stuff. So that's where I really grew the business. So now that's where the business is really based. And I lived there for 7 years and that's where I, hired most of my team. And then in 2023, so 2 years ago, I moved with my husband and 2 kids out to the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State, which is 2 hours west of Seattle, which I didn't even realize you could do that back, before my family moved here. But like everyone in my family, my brothers-in-law and my mother-in-law, and my dad, even all moved out here. So we just really wanted our kids to, be near their cousins and their grandparents. And it's a beautiful place. But I talked with the team and, they decided that they wanted to keep the production and the fulfillment, going in Indiana, which was, a huge relief to me to not have to move it all and find new team members and everything. So currently, Kristen King is our operations manager, and she runs the studio in Fort Wayne. And then we have a production manager named Erin who runs all the printing. And then we have a printer named Emily who works with Erin. We have a couple of fulfillment people who work with Kristen, Tori, and Aubrey. And so there are 5 people in Fort Wayne who work, different schedules at the studio. And then we have one other team member named Athena Harding, who's our marketing manager who you met at Noted. And she splits her time between Pennsylvania, where she's from, and Colorado and Argentina. She spends half the year in Patagonia because that's where her partner's family is. And it's a beautiful place and she loves being there. So right now she's in Colorado, but next month she'll be in Argentina for 6 months and then come back to the States next summer or next spring, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
It's not what I would have ever planned or expected. Although I do remember way back learning that there was a relationship between Egg Press and Hello Lucky. And Egg Press prints Hello Lucky's cards.
Yes.
I was when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do about the move, because the move with my family was sort of an inevitability that, I kind of knew was coming for a long time, but hadn't really, sorted out how I was going to deal with in terms of the business. But it actually has been so good for me and for Heartell, especially actually being at the trade show in Las Vegas. I keep referencing we were both at Noted. So I got to see you recently in July, but it really just made me realize how much Heartell has changed since, I did my last in-person trade show in 2017 and, having the team, they are, the Heartell is so much more than it ever was when it was just me. They have done such a great job growing it and running it. And, we are able to take on projects that I would have definitely just said no to before because I would be too afraid to fail at them or whatever. And so they're just very capable and invested. I feel so grateful that they care about Heartell as much as they do because it's a glorious thing to be doing it with other creative people,
Popping in real quick with a Paper Baristas update. Most of my listeners are probably aware by now of this all-American house of stationery that brews paper goods to do good with an eco-conscious, fair trade business model and philosophy. Here, people always come before profits, and at the heart of this brand is its founder, who I'm so lucky to call a great friend, Christy Asper. If you are not acquainted with Christy, please go listen to episode 56 for an inspiring earful from this award-winning founder. Since this is a Louis-themed episode, you should know that this family-owned brand was a 4-time finalist in this year's awards, a huge feat in and of itself. Then Paper Baristas swept 3 of its 4 categories, which is huge, but then Christy herself won the Latinx Maker of Note Award, an enormous honor. This is a fairly new category, actually one of several recognizing makers from underrepresented communities who are not only shaping the greeting card community, but the cards that you see when you shop. This is a huge honor that speaks not only to Christy's artistry, but her philosophy as well. While every last Paper Barista's offering has literally been upcycled from what would otherwise go in the trash, that's only part of the earth-friendly equation here. Since its founding in 2019, 10% of its profits have been donated to the International Justice Mission to fight human trafficking. So far, Paper Baristas has donated over $30,000, a number that grows with every purchase and quietly changes lives for the better forever. Christy also strongly believes that fair trade, eco-friendly products should be available, affordable, and accessible on every last store shelf. So while Paper Barista's recycled, biodegradable, handmade, and wood-free paper feels incredibly luxurious, and unlike most papers you have encountered, it's actually within reach too. There is clearly a lot to celebrate here, so I invite you to join the party by shopping this brand and making the world a better place with every stationery spend. Each product deftly blends the recycled with the upcycled. The thick handmade paper is created using pollution-free methods that can be as simple as letting them dry in the sun, conserving energy usage, and everything's chemical-free, protecting our waterways. Meanwhile, every last card comes folded or flat with deckled edges. There are endless undated planners, notebooks, and journals from which to choose. They recently introduced an incredible plantable collection, and every last home good, from pencil bag to tea towel to frame, is thoughtfully crafted in such a way that you will look forward to using them day in and day out. So, if you are a paper nerd in the wild, brew up some caffeinated stationery at paperbaristas.com. And if you're in the trade, visit its Fair Top Shop to check out their new seated gift bags, tea towels, and Swedish dishcloths. Plus, it's fully stocked for the winter holidays. However you shop this dynamic house of paper, please tell Christy that Sarah sent you.
And what an interesting sort of story, like born in Brooklyn in 2016, along with a million other stationery brands, and then moved to the Midwest, which is like, a good place to run a business. Like your overhead's going to be so low. And you're giving creatives a way to earn a living, which we know is hard away from coastal and
absolutely. I mean, I feel yes, part of the reason they're so invested is that it is a unique thing for Fort Wayne, for Indiana, to have a creative business like ours, that they have complete freedom over their hours and their jobs, and they have, they really can feel like they're getting to do something creative and fun. And we're, that's one of the benefits that we offer people, because there isn't as much of that stuff going on. And Fort Wayne isn't a small city by any means. It's the second largest city in Indiana, but it's not a big art city, and so.
Sure. And
it's very sort of traditional. Yeah. I think it's, there are, if you, in anywhere you go, there's going to be creative people. And I've been really lucky to find the people that I have, because, Erin, our printer, is just really, really good at what she does. She has a really, keen eye for detail. And we've been working together long enough that, she knows our processes in some ways better than I do, in terms of the color, our palette, and how things are going to look.
She's on the press. She's doing it every day.
Yeah. She actually doesn't run the press as much these days. It's really Emily, our new printer, does
all right.
of the work, but it's freed Erin up, which is really amazing to, experiment with new things. And so I know we were maybe going to talk about risograph, but this is relevant to that because we bought our first riso machine this summer. So Erin is, working on getting that set up, and we've been experimenting with riso for a couple of years by hiring it out to an outside studio.
Right.
Which has been great. And our customers have really loved it. I wanted to kind of test out, because woodblock is such a big part of our brand. And so I wanted to see what people would think of it, but they don't seem to, differentiate really between the two. And they're very similar in terms of how we layer colors. And, there are some important fun differences, but it's exciting because it's also much less labor intensive too.
Yes. And, when I saw your booth, it noted in Las Vegas in July, you had the art prints, riso art prints, and you had some letterpress right by them. And they worked it didn't look like
I'm glad you thought so.
Yeah, no. It made sense. And the colors of riso really add they're a really interesting direction to your work. As you were talking about the way you work with your team, I couldn't help but think about one of my favorite books, which is From A to B and Back Again by Andy Warhol. And he talks about, he was one of the first people to, he opened a factory and he hired people to do the printing. And so he wasn't physically doing it. And he has this whole thing in the book where, he's like, people are like, how do you delegate? How do you give up so much of your creative control? And his response was, sometimes I tell my staff to do something and they don't really understand what I meant and they do it their own way. And I like what they came up with better than my original conception. So there's a certain letting go and that's there, but there's also like an openness and a trust. And, I'm sure your team does creative stuff on their own time. It's very empowering as a creative to be in a position where it's like, I have a little leeway and I can kind of like, if I want to play with this green a little bit or, tweak something because I think it might work a little better, maybe I'll try it.
Right. I try to give them as much freedom as I can because you're right that they often have ideas that are better than mine and they're better at a lot of things than I am. And
it's not that your ideas aren't good. No, it's just that someone else looking at them sometimes brings something new to the table.
Exactly. And I've been doing this long enough. I've designed like 400 more greeting cards, at this point. So, we've kind of seen what I can do now. And it's fun to like bring new processes, new people, new like input into the process, but I'm going to read that Andy Warhol book because you're like the third person who's mentioned that to me. I want to read that.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. And I have to say, I read it when I was in high school and I think about it all the time. It's just a good book about art is business. And also it's just like really funny. Like he really had like a really good sense of humor that was just like very dry and a little dark that I really appreciate.
We can use plenty of that right now. Yeah, that's good.
Yes. Exactly. So now let's back up a little bit and talk technique and subject matter. An art critic once described your work as having a radical sincerity, which I think is spot on. There's a certain immediacy and connection and artfulness and sense of slowing down with your range that is really distinctive. Clearly, it's all you. And so I'm wondering, when you are creating a nude card from your woodblock designs, what does it need to feel done to you?
That's a good question. Thank you for your kind words too. That means a lot. It's interesting. I think the reason that woodblock has been such a good fit for me, honestly, is that it really forces me to distill my ideas down. I think a mistake that a lot of people make when they're starting out in visual art is to do a lot of detail, just really get like lost in the weeds of the details. And that was definitely like something that I did at the beginning. And so woodblock really you can't really do that because you can't get that detailed. And, the ink is either there or not there. So there's no shades like value, gradation that happens in the mark making that you're doing. You can do that using different colors that have different values and the way you lay them out. But and a lot of my early designs are really just like one color or two colors. And I've started to use more now, but I think all of those years of just practicing simplifying things so that I could carve them with my hands really forced me to figure out, what's most important about a design and what makes it stand out. But that's just in terms of like visual sort of technique. But in terms of like what makes a card feel ready to me is just like, will it help someone connect with another person, and will it be sort of spacious enough to allow for all the nuances that are part of, human relationships while still being sort of authentic and kind of honest and true and, feeling able to contain, the depth of emotion that people feel with each other. It's a hard thing to do, but it's such a challenge. It's such an interesting challenge. And I think that's why I continue to want to make greeting cards, even though I've designed so many of them, is that it's as complex as human relationships are, and being able to like reach out to someone and make them feel, seen and loved is just like an endlessly interesting like pursuit for me.
Clearly, I'm obsessed with the same ideas.
Yes, yeah, I know. I love meeting with other people who are similarly obsessed. It's so awesome.
But I love the idea that a card has to be very specific. It has to speak immediately to the situation when the person picks it up and they're like, "Oh my God, this is it!" That moment. versus being universal enough for the buyer or the store owner to be like, okay, there's more than 2 people among my shoppers who will buy this card. Like,
yes, I mean, that's a really tricky thing. And actually being at the show was really fun because, seeing how other designers are sort of walking that line. I was a couple booths down from Lindsay from Warren Tales, and her work is as different as it could be from mine. It's all text-based. There's a lot of humor in it. Like, nothing I do is funny, really. I mean, I like to think that I have a sense of humor outside my work, but none of my designs are like humorous, but she, and a lot of her work is very specific. Like, it's about an amputee or like, a very, just very like specific experiences that people have. But, I think she has had a lot of success because she really knows her audience very well. And I think she said that like a lot of first responders buy her cards and like teachers, like people in specific kind of lines of work that sort of use humor as a coping mechanism because they deal with people all day, that kind of thing. And so I just love that there are that the stationery, world is one that's like, I think we all agree that it's made stronger by the variety and like the diversity. But I do think that my wheelhouse is really these kind of like quiet, sincere, warm, I'm a lovey person. I'm like an emotional,
clearly.
Like, I'm like going to give you a hug even if I just met you, that's the kind of like, I like really wear my emotions on the surface of my, beings person. So I think that's what I try to imbue the cards with.
Yeah. And you do. Your cards are like hugs in the mail. And you were saying about Lindsay, it was looking at her stuff and she just won the Louis for
I know
the year,
which was to see her win that. I loved that. Yeah.
But she had like a card for terminal illness. I mean, like that is a teeny tiny little niche. It was like you put the terminally funny in terminal.
I know, that was so funny. I mean, I wish that card had existed because honestly, that's where my business started, was when my mom got sick with terminal cancer. And I just would go to the stores and it would be like, thinking of you or with sympathy, like my deepest condolences or like get well soon. Like you can't give a get well soon card to someone who has terminal cancer. You just can't, and especially like if it's your mom who you talk to every day, and so that was really what I was trying to get at, is like something that could hold, the enormity of what she was feeling, but really just be like, love you, really love you, mom,
Yes. Well, I think you've succeeded. And what a way to honor her by helping people going through the same thing.
Right. It gives my work a lot of meaning, and I hear a lot of stories from customers and from store owners and stuff who, have had similar experiences. And it's, just that feeling of not being alone. Loneliness can be just the most painful part of grief, but it's the most avoidable part of it. It's the only avoidable part of it,
right.
And it's something that we can do for each other in those moments. It often feels when someone around you is grieving that there's nothing you can do, but you absolutely can. You can make them feel less alone. You can let them know that, they're not the only one experiencing it, or that even if they are, experiencing something that you aren't directly experiencing, just that you see that they are, and that you recognize that their world has been like permanently altered and that their days don't feel normal. And, there's something so powerful about just reaching out to someone and being like, this is hard. And I'm sorry that you're going through it,
Totally.
We'll be right back after this.
When you walk into a Burlington, you're walking into amazing prices and great gifts. That's main character energy. Because at Burlington, the holiday savings aren't the only things turning heads. Discover quality finds and perfect presents for everyone on your list, even those who are hard to shop for. Toys and jewelry to new beauty brands and styles, these gifts go seamlessly from our stores to under your tree. Seriously, with these savings, why shop anywhere else?
Burlington deals, brands, wow.
And we're back.
Getting a card is always better than not getting a card. So I don't want people to like be held back by like, I can't find the right card, so I shouldn't send anything at all. Like the worst thing you can do is just say nothing. I think people are afraid of upsetting people. So they like avoid approaching it. They avoid bringing it up in person. They avoid sending the card because they don't want to like remind them. But the thing that you can't, I mean, the thing that you know once you've been through it is that you never forget. Like you're just having that experience all the time. And someone bringing it up isn't going to like remind you of it. It's going to make them feel like, oh, finally I can like talk to someone about how I'm actually feeling instead of going around pretending that I'm okay, you know, when I'm really not okay, you know?
Totally. I could not agree with you more. It's such an important thing to do for other people. Like, I don't even know what they're scared of. Like, if you're afraid someone's going to start crying, afraid they're going to get mad, or, you know, somehow it's your fault. But I don't know.
All of that. I mean, I think we've grown up, you know, feeling sort of afraid of our emotions, you know, and I think now there's a shift. You know, I see a lot of like parenting advice or whatever because I have little kids, but there's a lot of just like okaying the feeling, you know, it's okay to feel, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to do this, you know, and it's okay to express how you're feeling, you know, but I think a lot of people, you know, in our parents' generation, in the generations, you know, sort of that came before us that, and even in our generation where, you know, you have this pressure, like grief is, or big emotions are something to have in private. So that's part of what I feel like I'm trying to do with my work is just make those emotions more visible and more kind of acceptable in like an everyday kind of way. And also to express the fact that like those emotions come up alongside all the other emotions, you know, like you can be feeling intense grief and still like laugh at something or, you know, think something's funny or be just annoyed that you have to like wait in line for something or whatever, you know, like it's all mixed together. And so that's another thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately is like how to kind of accommodate for that kind of both and like it's this and it's also this, and they don't have to necessarily like make sense together, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. When I interviewed you on the Paper Nerd last year, when your brand turned 10, you told me, and this is a direct quote, our North American culture is still largely illiterate when it comes to how we think about our own grief and having skills to support others who are grieving. Our mission is to help people nurture one another through all of life's ups and downs by creating cards that let us express and hold space for the full range of emotions, feelings, and experiences. Absolutely. So more recently, you have teamed up with author, podcast host, and grief educator. I don't want to mangle her name. Lisa
Keefauver. Yeah.
All right, thank you. To create a new collection, Reimagining Grief. This collaboration developed from what I can only describe as like a serendipitous series of events, where first her podcast, then her book, which is called Grief is a Sneaky Bitch and sounds amazing, into your life, followed by her book tour, which led to this project, which is a series of 15 letterpress cards designed to help people show up through grief with care and presence. And this is exactly what you've been saying. These cards don't try to fix anything. They just offer comfort and acknowledgement. I love the copy on these. One reads, "So very loved just as you are." Another, "You can be resilient and still need a break." And of course, the images are equally compelling and heartfelt. I won't even try and describe them, but they're beautifully rendered. So I want to hear about the process of ideating this collection and then collaborating and bringing it to life. It's part of a larger summer release that you did within your range called Here For You, but it's like a sub collection. So you've really covered a lot of aspects of like a really complicated category, but these feel really special to me, especially because they were a collaboration. They're with someone who works in that field. So I would love to hear about how you feel these 15 cards stand apart from your other offerings. And also anything you learned personally about your own grieving process as you brought them to life with a professional equipped to deal with it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, thank you for your kind words again. I mean, this is such an interesting project because it was one of the first times, and it was the first time I've ever brought someone else into the creative process of actually like designing the cards. I came across Lisa's work when I was going through, actually right after our move to Washington, I think because I was living in a place where my mom had never been. You know, we were like in a new place and all of our family was finally together. You know, we were all together again. And it just was really hard that she wasn't here, part of it. You know, it had been, 4 years at that point since she passed away. But, one of the things I've learned about grief is that it's not really linear and there isn't like a beginning and a middle and an end. It's sort of like ebbs and flows, and it depends on what else is going on in your life. And I had it was sort of a loss to leave Indiana and leave like all these, people we cared about. And yeah. So it's kind of like just having like sort of some dark nights of the soul or whatever. And I just put grief into my podcast app, I think, on my phone. And I found Lisa's podcast, which also has the cheeky name, Grief is a Sneaky B Word. And, but I just got a lot of comfort from it during that season. And then she was coming out with this book, and I pre-ordered the book, which is something I don't, often do. Now I do it more because I know it means a lot to authors. But at the time, like, I just sort of did it and then forgot about it. And then a few months later, that June, my mother-in-law died really suddenly. She passed away from a heart attack, and it was very shocking because she was like a big part of our everyday lives. And Lisa's book showed up in my mailbox like 2 days later. And it just felt very serendipitous. And it was just what I needed. Lisa's advice just is born out of a lot of personal experience. She lost her husband at the age of 40 and has just had a lot of, experiences in her own life that she's drawn from. And also is like a trained narrative grief therapist and social worker of like, 20, some number of decades. I'm not sure how many. So anyway, the following week, she happened to be on a book tour and came to Bainbridge Island, which is like only an hour from where I live. So I ended up like taking the day, and I went down there. I went for a walk in Blodell Reserve, which is like a beautiful reserve there where actually the store carries our cards. That's how I knew about it. I went to this bookstore and like sat with these ladies who were from this like widows grieving club on Bainbridge Island. And they were like all these really nice ladies who like, just made me feel better. And I just, like I said, like we've been talking about, I just felt less alone, And so I kind of was like stalking Lisa a little bit after that, and saw on her website that she had a collection of cards, but that the cards all had exactly the same design, basically no illustration at all. It was like a field of like color, pink color, and then like a lot of words on top. And I loved all the words, but I was like, I'd like to have a crack at that, And so,
yes, greeting cards done by a non-greeting card person, where the verbiage is spot on, but yes. She's not visual. She's not, right. She doesn't make wood blocks.
Exactly. So I was like, okay. And I thought about it for a while. It took me like 6 months to, work up the courage to email her. But then I finally did in like January of this year. And she emailed me right back like the next day. And I was like, oh gosh, now I have to do this, But it was a really interesting process. And we talked a lot. She came to me with like a lot of ideas, and I kind of took them and we made a mood board together. She gave me some like photos and like color ideas. And, we just talked a lot. We had a lot of like Zoom conversations like this. And, in the end, I think it was just really important to us to, I think we have two like pretty important shared ideas. And one of them is that grief is not a problem to be solved. It's a broken thing that you can't ever fix. And so the job that you have once you are in that position is to just reconfigure your understanding of the world, to include the loss, to make room for it. And you have to practice just carrying it with you, because it's never going to go away. It's never not going to be part of who you are. It's going to come up. And then you have to, the work is that you have to let it wash over you and wash through you and let it change you in the process, And so that's something that Lisa talks a lot about, how we live in a culture where the expectation is that you're going to grieve for like a year, and you're going to do it in private, and then you're going to be done, and that's just not the way it works, and, the other shared, idea that I think we really connected on was just that piece about loneliness and how like, it's just so painful, but, and it can just be like the feeling that your grief is contagious, and that
I think that's why people are so scared to talk about it. Like if I let you talk about it, I might get sad too.
Exactly. And you might, because it is sad. It is sad that people die, but we are all going to do it, And so like, we got to get practice. And we really wanted them to be cards that people could show up for each other and then keep showing up, like not just right after the loss, and not just for death loss. There's a lot of other kinds of loss, like moving to another state or losing a job, or, not being able to have children, like losing that possibility, like losing the possibility of something you wanted, or a dream, losing a dream, or, loss of the idea of a world that is sustainable. Climate, stress, I think, is like in the DSM now, like climate fear. I forget what the word is that they use for it, but there's all kinds of like loss.
No, and your neuroses.
Yes, exactly. Like, yikes, this world is on fire kind of feeling, I really like that word metabolize, because for this, helping people metabolize their grief, metabolize their feelings, which means like ingest it, feel it, and like let it become part of who you are, and let it shape you and let it, another thing we talked a lot about was like the healing power of beauty, because, Lisa talks a lot about how, she goes on these like nature walks and makes a really intentional, point of noticing what's beautiful around her in the world. And I think, with visual art, that's like part of the purpose of it, right? Is to like sort of make people like take notice of all the things that are already beautiful in the world, and just to like enjoy that and let it sink in and let that joy and that peace kind of also just help be a balm for all the hard things, So we talked a lot about that. And yeah, I hope that the cards will be a reminder of all those things for both the givers and the senders, Yeah,
that's great. We always talk about how it feels to get a card, but it's a lot to send a card too. And to send one of these is a powerful type of thing, type of process. And, and again, I say it all the time, but there are things you can say, like writing down to someone that you just cannot say in person or even on a text or an email. Like, you're giving them to the space to have these conversations.
Absolutely. And also, like, I wanted to make cards where you wouldn't have to think of something really special to say. Like, you could just send the card and write, love you, thinking about you, and just that's enough, like, I don't want it to feel so hard. Like people have to, kind of come up with some kind of miraculous, phrasing that's going to like you can't solve it. You can't fix it. You just can't. And so you don't have to try. That's the beauty of it, is that you don't have to fix it for someone. You don't have to make them not feel sad that whoever they lost, that, died. You just have to say like, I see that you are going through this, and I'm so sorry that like you are in the midst of this right now, and I'm here, I'm sharing your sorrow and like with you, those kinds of things.
I often, these evolutions, these, eureka moments, they're done one-on-one private moments, and, and your range obviously even allows them to do it over many miles and, through time and space. So it's just a powerful collection.
Thank you. I'm so glad you like it, Sarah. I was like, I don't know. This is a lot of sympathy cards. I mean, sympathy is like 3% of what we sell. So I was like, that's why our new release got so big, honestly, because I was like really excited about the collection with Lisa. And that turned out to be 15 cards. But then I was like, like we have to make some birthday cards. Then we ended up with birthday cards, and then we did the pattern cards. So it was a 33 card release this summer. It was like the biggest. My team was like, sat me down and was like, okay.
Can we do something other than grief?
We're going to try some Riso for a while, because everyone like needs a little breathing room from having something.
Well, yeah. And my next question is about that. And what a great way to offset, some of these kind of heavier, more difficult themes than with something that's just like so bright and candy colored.
I know. I love all the neons. I love Riso. I do. I really do. I mean, it's fun for me because when I first started, like, honestly, Sarah, I was never like an art prodigy or anything. And I've worked really hard over the years on just my drawing skills, on like observational. I do a lot of observational like sketching and stuff. And I'm always trying to get better at drawing the figure and, just using different materials. And I play around a lot with materials on my own and in my sketchbooks. But, so far, like everything that I've put out for Heartell really has been in the woodblock format. So Riso is really like a step for me towards being able to make images in just a different way and with different materials. I can use, I use a lot of colored pencils, I use markers, I use like different kinds of paint, and I can scan that in and like turn it into a Riso print in a way that just gives me like a lot more freedom in terms of what the image can look like, and that was a little scary at first because I was like, what if people don't like this? Like they like my woodblock prints, but these don't look like that. But I think I've had enough practice now of like figuring out what my style is and what is important about an image to me that, I feel a little bit more confident in like experimenting with those things. But that is like, as a designer, as an artist, as someone who like loves to learn new things and try new things, it's very exciting to like have a new medium to play with,
Absolutely. So I feel like your range has always been about color as much as it's been about woodblock and messaging. There's color plays like a really, really strong, like your booths were always like, they attracted you on basis of color. And so you get into Riso with some of the more they're almost like more, I keep saying more candy colored, neon, like a 2.0, it's just like totally. Things are more real than they are. So currently you have 4 prints.
We have art prints. We also did a whole greeting card release earlier in January of this year. I think it was like 16 or 12. It's all mixed in now at this point. We don't, once we do a new collection, we just kind of fold it into the catalog. Because if we just kept everything separate, it would get confusing for like buyers,
For everybody, yes.
Yeah. And also the first collection, honestly, there was a learning curve there. And like the first printing of it, there were like half the cards that came out looking like a little bit faded to me. And it wasn't so bad that we like couldn't sell them. But the ones that like did well and we reprinted, we like figured out the problems that we ran into. Right. The inks have different qualities. So I had chosen 3 colors for that release. And it turns out all of them have this property that only some of the Riso colors have, where they've added white to the ink and there's like an opacity to it. And so you can't layer those in quite the same way. It gets kind of gummy. And so you can't do those at like 100% because everything with Riso is like percentages, so something will be at like 90% or 80%. And so, I didn't know that about the Riso palette.
You learn as you go.
You absolutely do. Yeah. So I'm glad we had those couple of years of like practicing with, we were working with Resolve Studio, which is like an amazing Riso printing studio in Philadelphia. And I learned a lot from Lindsay. Like she just has a lot of, nuanced skill and all the stuff, all the stuff that Erin's learned about our letterpress inks over the years, we have to do that all over again now with Riso. So we bought 14 colors with the press. Wow. So we are like ready to rock, we're going to do art prints and we're going to do greeting cards. And I hope that we'll do some more of those like pattern box sets when the Riso format. We're going to do a couple more letterpress ones first, but patterns are like a big, interest of mine right now. So I'm interested to see how I can use the Riso to like do some fun patterns. And I want to do some bigger art prints. You can print 11 by 17 on the Riso.
That's a nice size.
Yeah. It is. And we've done some for our Art for Change program, but I want to do some more like just Heartell art prints, and we want to try doing calendars. So there's like a lot of stuff that didn't make sense on the letterpress, that we can try now. And like notepads, like things that you cut. We also bought a paper cutter for the first time this year. I know it's insane to have a business selling stationery for 10 years and not have a paper cutter, but it's just never seemed necessary.
That's awesome. I feel like if you did a Riso calendar, like, what, you don't see enough of that as much anymore, when you would just get the one print and it would have all the months and then you could just get it all year. Like I feel
and you can make it sort of an art print then too on the top.
Right. I feel like your work would really lend itself to that format. And first of all, I don't only want to look at it for a month. So I want to look at it all year. You know what I mean? Like, cause you just, I don't know, that there's some things that you like switching it up every month. And there's some things where you're like, you know what, I can look at this for a while and it's always dynamic to me. So I think that would be a really fun format.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you think that would work. I want to try that. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to think about that.
All right, good. Okay. I can't wait to see. So I am really curious if you have a favorite card from your range and why.
That's a good question. I'm always like in love with the most recent thing I did. Like I think that's just an art
your
thing.
Your newest baby.
Art making thing. But I really love this like thinking of you and smiling card. And then I think the Just So Very Loved Just As You Are. Those are like my 2 favorites from that collection. I also really like the one that's like, it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. It's like a woman holding a vase, partly because I've been working really hard on my figure drawing. And so being able to include some figures in a style that I felt good about in that collection felt like, kind of a personal goal of mine. And so I'm proud of that.
You should be. Yeah. I felt like there's like hands and bodies and faces, like,
I've been working hard.
Like moving into your range.
But I practice a lot. I did a lot of drawing actually from, I don't think I've told this to anyone, but I pulled up a bunch of YouTube videos of like modern dancers and like just stood in my studio and was like figure drawing, as they were moving. Cause I feel like that's like the tricky thing is capturing the way bodies move, and in a static image, that's like a timeless problem or whatever, but it was fun to try with that. And I drew a lot of like sad people when I was trying to put that collection together because I wanted it to feel real. I wanted it to feel authentic, and not all of them made it into the collection, but I do think, there's like the one that's like, tears are a sign of your love. And it's like a, head like this. And just those like physical gestures, I think that bodies can make can express feeling in a really interesting way.
I mean, when you think about, you do enough natural drawings, like, how many great painters have tried to capture, what does wind look like blowing through the trees?
Oh my gosh,
like it's such a fascinating subject, and there's so many different takes on it. Well, it's the same with the human body and grief and movement and, gesture. And I love that you're playing around with these, and they're very sort of, representative, like someone can look at it and be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel.
I love that. I'm trying so hard. It's, it's hard to make bodies look, both sort of unique and specific enough to be like believable, but, general enough to sort of project yourself onto it, since bodies come in so many different shapes. Right. I'm trying to stay away from like these sort of idealized, sort of sexualized ideas of people's, especially women's bodies. I've been thinking about this a lot because I actually started lifting heavy weights last year. Like as an effort to really? Oh, cool. So I've been like thinking about just like strong, actually I have this book, I'm going to send you a link to it. It's called Venus with Biceps. And it's this really amazing book of like photographs and ephemera of like collecting, strong women images over the centuries. And, women who like Sandwina, she's like, showing her biceps and like lifting her husband up above her head, and just thinking about like images of powerful, strong women, because I think, so much of our Western culture like idealizes this sort of like wafy, woman with no power. And it's appealing to me. That's actually something I'm thinking about like for the future, is like more, drawings of strong women. So look for that.
I love that. And that was my next question. What are you working on for 26? I love that. And to put that, it's a very powerful thing to put that in a card and be like, this is how I see you.
Yes,
You may look in the mirror and see your flaws, but I see you as this incredibly strong woman who's just like kicking ass every day.
Absolutely. I cannot say that to my friends enough. Like, I think we all have grown up just being told that we're not good enough in one way or another, either like directly by the people we care about or just indirectly by culture and magazine and images and everything, like women have been told to like, evaluate their bodies as a problem to fix, as a series of problems to fix, like fix your hair and fix your face and fix your weight and all this stuff. And thinking of my body as in terms of like a powerful, thing that has like helped me like grow two humans and get this far in life and like, build a business and build a life for myself. Like, it's just very appealing to have like a switch, flip that perspective and just think about my body as like a gift and a tool instead of something to be like looked at by other people,
and judged.
And judged
And critiqued and dismantled.
Right.
Please, from the bottom of my heart and other women's heart, like, please continue on this vein. And
I will. I absolutely will. And older women's bodies, like, I think, we really idealize young women, but, the most amazing, like, interesting women I know are like the older ones, because they've been around and like, just all the things that they have learned and the wisdom and all the ways in which they hold our world together, like I want to try to like do just, honor that in my work.
Please do. I mean, when you think of, to bring up the Barbie movie, but like I just was reading, they almost took out the scene where she was at the bus stop with the old woman and she tells the old woman that she's beautiful. And that's like one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. Like, even when I saw it, I was like, I can't believe they even put this in. Like, it's such a radical idea that, even women aren't like, it's difficult for them to get their arms around it. So anything you can kind of do to bring this front and center, like, please keep practicing drawing those women.
Yes, I will get to work. I promise. That's important to me. Very much so. It's so fun.
Thank you so much, Rachel. After seeing your gorgeous work in Las Vegas, it is such a treat to go behind the brand to see how you make it all happen. Our conversation is not done yet. It continues next month. Finally, thank you for listening and for listening this far. Of course, feel free to give me a 5-star rating and review if you are so inclined. It will help new nerds find us. The Paperfold is proud to be a member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. To learn more about this dynamic, incredible community, please visit evergreenpodcast.com. Thank you so much, nerds, and please stay safe out there.